What if the man everyone wanted gone never fell? Myung-Gi, the scammer, the survivor. One death that changed everything. But take that away, and the games twist in ways no one saw coming. Alliances shatter, fates rewrite, blood runs deeper. This is the story of the Squid Game that almost was, and it begins with the first choice. The PA system coldly explains, the gumball you hold will decide your role in the next game. What no one knows yet is that those colors will split players into hunters and hiders for the upcoming hide-and-seek death game. Jun-hee clutched her belly, every contraction. Her face was pale, sweat dripping, but the baby wasn't waiting for the rules. The guards lined players in front of the endless halls. Roles were being assigned, hunters with trackers, prey with nothing but fear. Just like the original timeline, Jun-hee was handed the knives, blades meant to carve out her survival in the dark. But this time, she didn't hold them tight and stepped back. She turned and walked straight toward Myung-Gi. Myung-Gi, the man she hated, the man who left her alone, pregnant, broken. She pressed the knife into his hand. Her voice cracked. Jun-hee said,
"Don't make me a killer."
For a moment, Myung-Gi didn't move, and something cracked inside him. For the first time, he didn't see her as the girl who ruined his life, not as the girlfriend who cursed his name, not as the mother of a child he once begged her to abort. He saw her as the only person who ever looked at him like he could be better, before the scams. And for the first time in the entire game, his hands stopped shaking. He nodded, took her place, stepped onto the red team, the hunters. The moment the buzzer sounded, the walls seemed to close in. Players scattered into the maze, blue bands tied to their arms, hearts pounding like drums of prey. And Myung-Gi, knife clenched in his fist, didn't move alone. Nam-gyu was at his side, the two hunters slipping into the shadows together. But there was a secret in Myung-Gi's eyes. He wasn't just hunting the hiders. He was ready to turn his blade on seekers too. He killed. One man tried to hide behind the door with the knife, waiting for hiders. Myung-Gi lunged, blade flashing, the scream echoing down the hall. Another tried to run. Myung-Gi slammed him against the wall, stabbing again and again until the body slid down lifeless. Every stab was for her. Every drop of blood was one more second bought for Jun-hee to live. But then, the greed clawed its way back. Nam-gyu appeared out of the shadows, knife dripping, eyes wild. He grinned.
"Stack the pot. Raise the prize. Don't stop now."
And for a heartbeat, Myung-Gi froze. The sound of coins crashing into the piggy bank thundered in his skull. 45.6 billion won, enough to buy safety, enough to disappear forever, enough to prove he wasn't just a loser running scams on the internet. His chest tightened, his grip on the knife turned white, the hunger for more burned through him like fire. But then, he heard her voice, not here, not now, but from memory, Jun-hee's whisper,
"Don't make me a killer."
And his hand trembled. The vision of her face broke through the flashing lights, the screams, the temptation, and he pulled back. Nam-gyu snarled and says,
"What's wrong with you? Just one more kill. The amazing Myung-Gi. Do it, man."
Myung-Gi's breath was ragged, eyes burning with greed. He tilted his head, a grin crawling across his face. Myung-Gi says,
"One more? No, this is all profit now. Every kill adds to the stack."
He tapped the knife like it was a coin in his hand.
"I don't play for scraps. I play like crypto, endless, unstoppable, and you're just the next investment I cash out."
The rest of the game blurred into chaos. Footsteps pounding, players shrieked as they were cornered, blood painting the halls like graffiti. But through it all, Myung-Gi kept checking over his shoulder. Not for enemies, not for guards, but for her, for Jun-hee. When the final buzzer blared, the entire maze shook with the sound. The survivors stumbled back into the main hall, blue armbands ripped and bloodied, red team members panting, their knives slick. And there she was, Jun-hee, alive, with the baby in her hands. She met his eyes for the first time in months, maybe years. She didn't glare, she didn't spit venom, she just looked at him. And Myung-Gi, for the first time in his life, felt like more than a scammer, more than a hustler, more than MG coin. He felt like someone worth saving, someone worth being. But deep down, he knew the hunger hadn't vanished. The prize was still waiting, the greed was still whispering. And next time, he wasn't sure which voice would win. The players shuffled back into the dorm. The air was heavy, too many footsteps missing, too many beds empty. The survivors avoided each other's eyes, and when the iron doors slammed shut, the silence was louder than the alarms. But not all silence is equal. Whispers moved like smoke across the room. Low voices, half-finished sentences. MG coin is dangerous. He killed too easily, almost 11 players. Did you see his face? Eyes flicked to Myung-Gi in the corner, with fear and disgust. And Myung-Gi? He didn't care, not outwardly. He sat at the foot of Jun-hee's bed, back turned to her, staring at the guards by the doors. When the lights flickered, just for a second, he shifted his weight, not toward safety, not toward the beds, but forward, toward the guards, eyes narrowed like he could already see the trap. Something in him knew. Maybe it was greed. Maybe it was his twisted crypto senses. The elites weren't just watching. They were insane enough to use the baby as entertainment. And amazing Myung-Gi was ready to play their game first. Jun-hee saw it, the way his shoulders stayed squared. The way his hand never strayed far from the knife he kept tucked against his thigh. She saw something different. This wasn't the greedy influencer who once disappeared for 6 months ignoring her calls. This wasn't MG coin. This was someone else, or at least someone trying. Later, when her ankle swelled so badly she couldn't stand, Myung-Gi didn't hesitate. He tore a strip of his own sleeve, wrapped it tight, steady as a medic. His hands shook at first, but then steadied when she flinched at the pain.
Hold still.
He muttered softer than she expected. Not kind, but not cruel either. Gumja watched from across the room. She leaned to Hyunju, her voice barely a breath.
Maybe he's not just a wolf.
Hyunju didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on Myung-Gi, studying him, judging, and for a moment, it looked like redemption. The scammer turned protector, but then, the board lit up with the prize amount. The numbers glowed in neon, spilling gold light across the dorm. Every eye snapped toward it, because it wasn't just money, it was hope, it was freedom, it was everything they came here to die for. And Myung-Gi? He twitched. The old hunger roared awake inside him. The hustler's instinct. The voice that had never really gone quiet. All it took was a number on a wall, and suddenly his hands itched again. His heart raced again. The scammer in him whispered, "That could be yours." Jun-hee saw it. The flicker in his eyes. The way his body leaned forward just slightly toward the board. And for a second, just a second, she hated him all over again. Because maybe nothing had changed. Maybe he was still the same man who left her to raise a child alone. Maybe all the protection, all the blood, all the sleeves wrapped around her ankle, it was just another investment, a way to cash out later. But then he turned his head, just enough to glance back at her. Not long, not soft, but enough. And she froze, because behind the greed there was something else. Something raw, something that made him human again. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it wasn't hate anymore either. For the first time in his life, Myung-Gi's greed wasn't the only thing inside him. It was still there, burning, hungry, loud, love. But it will be tested in the next game. Will he pass? This was no playground. The jump rope game had begun. A towering platform stretched into the void. A fall here wasn't a fall, it was a sentence. The kind you never came back from. The game begins. The rope slammed. Bodies fell. Screams shattered the silence. The first few players leapt. Some cleared it, some didn't. Gi-hun stepped forward. The baby was strapped tight against his chest, wrapped in cloth torn from his own shirt. Jun-hee had pressed the child into his arms. Myung-Gi stayed back at her side to support her. For a moment, Gi-hun had almost collapsed under the weight of it all. His ribs cracked from the last trial, his spirit broken. But in the shadows before the round began, Jumja's voice cut through his doubt.
Don't you dare stop now. That baby will breathe with your courage.
And somehow those words lit the fire again. On the platform, he could barely breathe, but he didn't hesitate. He jumped, barely. Gasps filled the air. He steadied himself, alive. One by one, the others moved. Hyunju, Gumja, Yongsik. Each one trembling, sweat dripping down their temples. Fear etched into every step. And then, it was Jun-hee's turn. Her body was still broken from hide and seek. Her ankle fractured. Her strength is gone after childbirth. She stood at the edge of the platform, knees buckling, eyes glassy. Her breathing came fast, shallow, ragged. Everyone knew, one wrong step and she wouldn't make it. Myung-Gi stepped forward. His voice was loud, sharper than usual, cutting through the suffocating silence.
I'll carry her.
The other players turned shocked. For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe this was his redemption. Maybe love had finally won over greed. But Jun-hee shook her head. Her voice was barely a whisper, so soft, cracked, and tired, it almost vanished into the wind. She said,
No, you'll drop me. You'll choose the money.
The words landed harder than any rope could. Myung-Gi staggered back as if she'd stabbed him. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Because deep down, maybe she was right. Maybe even he couldn't trust himself. Not with this. Not with her. And before he could speak, she jumped, gone. The silence that followed was worse. An emptiness that swallowed the entire arena. The baby cried out. A small, piercing wail muffled against Gi-hun's chest. He clutched her tighter, and Myung-Gi, he fell to his knees. The sound left his his throat not as a scream, but as a hollow gasp. The greed inside him howled for the prize. 45.6 billion won, enough to erase his debts. But the love for her, the twisted, broken, desperate love he never admitted, it shattered him. Because Jun-hee had died not believing in him. Her last words weren't forgiveness. Her last words weren't love. Her last words were doubtful.
He'll drop me. He'll choose the money.
And now, he would never have the chance to prove her wrong. The guards gave no pause. The game continued. The rope slammed again. Another player jumped. Another fell. But Myung-Gi stayed on his knees, shaking, silent. And yet, as the rope cracked through the air, one thought cut deeper than fear. If the baby survived, she would be the last piece of Jun-hee left in this world. With blood in his mouth and greed still clawing at his chest, Myung-Gi rose. Step by step, he faced the rope, and somehow he passed. But that was only the beginning. His real trial will begin in the next round. The game ended. The rope stopped swinging. The bodies stopped falling. But the silence, that never ended. When the guards herded the survivors back into the dorm, no one spoke to him because they all saw it. The moment Jun-hee slipped, the way she fell, the way she chose death before she chose him. And Myung-Gi, he saw it more than anyone. Back in the dorm, the air was different. He whispered it into the dark, over and over, teeth clenched so no one could hear.
I'll protect you, I swear. I'll protect you.
And yet, even as he made that vow, the greed still lingered. The piggy bank still glowed. The coin still clinked in his mind. He couldn't escape it. He didn't know how. But something had shifted. Something irreversible. Because for the first time in his life, greed wasn't the only thing driving him. It was fighting for space. Against grief. Against love. Against something bigger than himself. And that was terrifying. Because Myung-Gi didn't know if he could live without greed. But he also knew he couldn't live without her memory. So he clung to the only thing left. The baby. The last thread tying him to Jun-hee. The last proof that once someone believed in him. He didn't sleep that night. Not really. He sat in the corner, eyes wide, staring at the guards, the board, the baby. Every muscle taut, like a predator waiting to strike, but not at the players, not at the guards, at fate itself. Because if fate tried to take her, if fate tried to rip Jun-hee from him again, he would burn the whole game down. It had remade him. And the game? The game wasn't ready for what he was about to become. The dorm was silent as players entered the long hall. A single table stretched under a flickering light. Trays slid forward. Meat, rice, and one steel knife each. The scrape of metal echoed. This wasn't dinner. It was survival. Then a guard placed something different at the head of the table. A small silver bowl, right in front of the baby. The voice came overhead, distorted, mechanical, booming into every corner of the hall. The child is now a player. One winner. No exceptions. The room cracked. Voices rose like fire. Are you kidding me? This is insane. She's dead weight. Knives scraped against trays. Hands slammed against steel. Everyone shouted over each other until the noise was unbearable. Then came the vote to eliminate one player. Player 100 stood first, tray still in hand.
I'll say it. We vote for the baby. It's not heartless. It's math. She's not playing. She's not strategizing. She's a liability. You want to die protecting a toddler? Go ahead. I won't.
Player 039 crossed himself, muttering a prayer.
Innocence must be returned to heaven, a sacrifice demanded.
His knife tapped the tray in rhythm like a church bell tolling. The baby whimpered. Gi-hun pulled her closer, shaking his head.
You touch her, and I swear none of you will see daylight again.
The room was on fire now. Gumja slammed her fist on the table, voice cracking with rage.
If you vote to kill a child, then you're worse than the game itself.
Young-sik tugged her sleeve, eyes darting.
Stop, Ma! Don't make them angry.
But it was already too late. The votes were piling, knives clinking, hands rising. One by one, players choosing murder over mercy. And then, a thunderclap on steel. Myung-Gi's fist slammed the table so hard the plates rattled. The room froze. His eyes burned. His breath shook. But his voice was steady.
She lives, or I kill every last one of you first.
Silence. No one laughed. No one called his bluff. Because they had seen him. They had seen what he was capable of in hide and seek. They had seen how easily he killed when pushed. They had seen the madness in his eyes when Jun-hee fell. This wasn't greed anymore. This wasn't survival instinct. This was obsession. And everyone at that table believed him. Player 100 leaned back, lips curling into a smirk.
You've lost it. All this over a kid?
Myung-Gi didn't blink, didn't move, just let the words hang in the air like a death sentence. Player 039 whispered again. eyes wide.
He means it.
And the others knew he was right, because Myung-Gi wasn't defending the baby like she was a prize. He wasn't doing it for the money, not even for himself. He was doing it for Jun-hee, for the ghost of the woman who never trusted him, who never forgave him, for the love that tore him apart. The baby was all he had left, and he'd burned the whole game to ash before letting her die. The room shifted, tension twisted into fear, knives lowered just slightly, not because they agreed with him, but because they knew, if anyone tried, he'd be the first to strike, and no one wanted to be on the other end of Myung-Gi's blade. The voice overhead cut through again. 3 votes for elimination, 2 votes for protection, 5 abstained. No majority. No elimination will be performed. Relief hit some. Disappointment hit others, but no one spoke. The table wasn't divided anymore, it was broken, and every break led back to Myung-Gi. He sat back, knife in hand, eyes on anyone who looked too long. The baby whimpered. He didn't move. Everyone knew. One wrong step, and he would kill. Not for money, not for strategy, but for obsession. That night, no one finished their food. No one slept. The air was too heavy, the silence too sharp, and as the lights dimmed, Myung-Gi stayed awake. Knife on the table, eyes wide, watching. Because if the world wanted to take Jun-hee from him again, they'd have to go through him first. And in the next game, his loyalty to Jun-hee and the child will be tested. The rooftop shook like it was alive. The Sky Squid game, the final game, with Myung-Gi, the baby, Gi-hun, Young-sik, Gum-ja, Hyun-ju, player 039, player 100, and 5 more. Concrete cracked under stomping feet. Wind screamed between the towers, pulling at their bodies, threatening to drag them into the abyss below. The game had no walls, no safety, only sky. One push, one slip, one wrong breath, and you were gone. Round 1. Myung-Gi slowly steps on the red button. Bodies fell. Screams echoed off the glass. The thud of impact was lost in the endless distance, swallowed by the storm. Gi-hun clutched the baby against his chest. Every step was slower, heavier, but he didn't let go. And Myung-Gi, he stayed close, too close, eyes wild. He wasn't watching the other players, he wasn't even watching the front man's masked guards. He was watching the baby, not as a target, not as a weakness, but as if she were the last thread tying him to this world. Every shove, every scream, every bloody hand wrapped around a rope. Myung-Gi pushed through with his teeth bared.
She's not dying,
he said, not to anyone in particular, not even to himself, but to the ghost that had haunted him since Jump the Rope. Myung-Gi said to himself,
not dying like Jun-hee.
The words came again and again, forced through clenched teeth, a mantra, a curse, a vow. Greed still clawed at him. In flashes, in the corner of his vision, he saw the bank, the prize money glowing like salvation, the dream of penthouses, of champagne and gold watches, of the life he swore the world owed him. The hunger rose hot in his chest, the same hunger that had once made him sell lies to strangers, that had once made him abandon Jun-hee when she needed him most. But every time it rose, every time his hand twitched toward opportunity, he looked at the baby, her tiny fists curled into Gi-hun's shirt, her small chest rising and falling against the chaos. Her eyes still closed as if she hadn't seen the blood that painted this rooftop red, and the greed drowned in grief. Because money couldn't bring Jun-hee back. No prize could erase the last words she ever said to him. No number could undo the way she chose death rather than trust him. So he fought like a man possessed, not for the piggy bank, not for survival, not even for himself. He fought for her memory, for Jun-hee. The other players saw it, and it terrified them. Because Myung-Gi wasn't calculating anymore, he wasn't strategic, he was feral. He strategized the win in a way which led him into killing Hyun-ju and Gum-ja, in such a hideous way that Gi-hun did not even notice. When Gi-hun was facing the other players and their hatred for the baby, Myung-Gi was slowly emptying the arena by killing off his own allies. Perhaps his evil traits never left his soul, and his strategy was his weapon to save the baby and himself. He did not waste his time on Young-sik because he knew how weak he was. The next round began and he stood in front of Gi-hun in the form of protection. Gi-hun kept looking around for Gum-ja and Hyun-ju, and his eyes were filled with rage. That the opposite players killed them, not knowing it was actually Myung-Gi. Round 2. Myung-Gi presses the button again and charges to the opposite players. Gi-hun looks at Young-sik in denial. Young-sik saw what Myung-Gi did, but his shock led him into being emotionless. All he did was point at Myung-Gi and walk off the platform and kill himself. Gi-hun was still, taking his time to process. Meanwhile, Myung-Gi, he slammed bodies down with a strength born from obsession. He bit, clawed, tore, like the rooftop itself was his battlefield, and every life between him and the baby was a threat.
You touch her,
He roared, shoving a man off the edge.
I'll rip you apart.
The wind howled, drowning screams as the man vanished into the clouds. But it wasn't victory that filled Myung-Gi's face. It was rage. It was sorrow. It was love twisted into something so sharp it cut him from the inside. Icon of regret. When the final round began, Myung-Gi was no longer MG Coin. Myung-Gi, Gi-hun, and the baby stand on the platform. No longer the scammer in flashy suits who bragged online about crypto gains. No longer the coward who once left Jun-hee alone in the world. He wasn't even the same man who entered the game. He had become something else. The baby still breathed. That was all that mattered. Everything else, money, freedom, even his own life, felt like ash in his hands. When the rooftop finally stilled, when the last shove was made, and the screams of player 100 echoed to silence, the game has ended. The final winners, Myung-Gi, Gi-hun, and the baby. Myung-Gi didn't stand with money. He didn't raise his hands in triumph. He didn't even smile. Not to Gi-hun, to Jun-hee. Through her daughter, Gi-hun's voice cut like glass.
How could you kill the ones Jun-hee loved? You think saving the baby makes it right?
Myung-Gi whispered back, voice shaking.
I did what I could for her. I had to protect her.
But the game was listening, and the game never let promises last. Gi-hun leaned closer, his words heavy with the same fire he carried since the first game.
You killed so many. You even tried to kill your own friends. Don't you remember what I said before? Money isn't worth more than people. But you, every time you saw a chance at cash, your humanity died. That's who you are. That's who you'll always be.
Myung-Gi's vow wasn't hopeful. It wasn't redemption. It was a punishment, because the truth was brutal. He hadn't won. Not really. He had money, but no humanity. A child in his arms, but a grave in his heart. Love had beaten his greed, but only after it burned everything else away. And that was his greatest punishment of all. The game is over. But for Myung-Gi, the demons in his head would follow him forever. Myung-Gi killed a lot of people, and no doubt his biggest kill was Thanos. But what would happen if Thanos never died? Will he save the baby instead, or become something else? Watch the video on the screen to find out.